Okay, monitor mode. If we come up here to the top on the toolbar, if you have your monitor mode button turned on, it should be the square with the red arrow here on it. So we'll go ahead and click on monitor mode. And if you notice, we have three tabs by default: monitor 1, monitor 2, monitor 3. And right now we're under monitor 1, and it says lock display none. And then we have date and time, processor usage, available memory, available disk space. So these are defaulted values that are put in from the factory, and so you can leave these or you could modify monitor 1. So what I usually do is jump over to monitor 2. This one's blank, and you could add anything you want to it and save it, and then every time you come back, monitor 2 would be set up for you the way you want it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on monitor 2, and there's a couple of different things we can do, and probably the quickest and easiest is just to do add entry over here on the right hand side. If I do add entry, I get select an entry to insert. So if I hit the drop down arrow, here's a list of things that we can insert into the monitor mode, and all this really means is I can choose a point, and then this screen will monitor those values, and I can sit here and watch the values. So I'm going to drop down here to static pressure. Go ahead and choose that and say OK. And up here I get static pressure, and I get a value of 51.9, and I have an application array register on the left of static pressure, and it is 11.3.0. So it went out and found the app array register automatically, brought it in, and gave it a description called static pressure. It also gave it a value, and this is a live value coming in from my G4 for static pressure. Okay. The next thing we can do is, if we drop down to the trend button, and we go ahead and choose that, we get a trend, and this is happening every second or so. And so let me go ahead and open up the date and time here where you can see it. And so here is my date and time, 04/17/10 at 14/18/10 and 15/20/25. So it's every 5 seconds in this case. And my static pressure, if it were fluctuating, changing, you'd see some changes here. So I can let this trend while I'm watching it. This trend isn't going to be locked into the system on the G4. It's just right now as I'm watching it on the screen. The next neat thing that we can do here is we can choose the graph button from the trend, and so you can view this static pressure trend through tab data or text, and also on a graph format with a time and date stamped down here at the bottom. So every 5 seconds you can see we get a new reading, and then you can, from a reading of 51.902 up to 51.910. So this is minimum and maximum. Now we can modify the graph. If I double left click in here, axis 1, and notice it's set up for static pressure, and that's my only choice, and it's set up for auto range for best fit. If I wanted to change my range, I just uncheck auto range for best fit and do a minimum and maximum range, type it into the slots, and change that. In this case, auto range for best fit is going to work good for me, so I'm going to leave that. The line width automatically is set up for thin, so I'm going to choose thick just to show you the difference. So I chose thick and apply. I can also change the color. Notice I'm still connected to or clicked on y-axis 1. So say I wanted that to be in red, I can choose red from the list and go ahead and choose it. Now y-axis 1 changes to red color, and then you can see there on the graph it's changed to red. If I go to more, I can change some of my text, monochrome, color, my font size. A neat one here is plot style. If I choose bar and apply that, you can see back behind here that I have a bar graph now. And so as we make changes, we can customize it and make it look a little different if that interests you. Okay, so there's dots, and then I'm going to go back to line here, apply that, and back to general, and okay. Okay, so this is the tab data and the graph data. Now from here on the graph, we could also print this. So if I chose the print button and I would choose a printer from the list and go ahead and send it out, I'm going to go ahead and close both of these. Now I could go back up to add entry. I could grab another one. So if I went back down here and let's say I went to differential pressure and go ahead and choose OK, and we give it a second, it should update. Now if yours isn't updating, right down here in the bottom there is a checkbox for monitor. So if I choose the checkbox, then it should refresh. And I can also, if I come over here to my read display list, notice right now the lock display is none. So if I come over here to the drop down, I don't have anything in the list. So what I got to do is I have to read the display list, and what this is talking about is the display on your G4. So when I tell it to read the display list, it's going to go out and read everything that is set up on your G4 display. It's going to bring it back here and allow me to select any of the points that I want to look at, and then I can lock those into this monitor mode and also watch them. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the read display list and let it read the current values. And so now I'm going to hit the drop down, and you can see we have station ID, date and time, charger, battery voltage, tube ID, and so forth. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop down here and click on tube 1 static pressure, and if we look at our display, it should have the value for static pressure on tube 1 displayed on the front door of your G4 box. Okay. I can also grab one of these if I highlight it, and I can do a delete entry, and just that quick it goes away. If I move off of monitor 2, for example, I back out and I go back into the entry mode, the values that I've put into monitor 2 here are going to go away. So the way to keep this monitor 2 set up the way you want it is simply do a save config. So if I choose that button, now this config should be saved on monitor 2. The next time I come back to monitor 2, it's going to have static pressure on it. Okay. When we read the display and we choose a list up here, notice it says lock display. So tube 1 static pressure is locked on my display. It's not scrolling on the display anymore. So if I come down to the next button, it is unlock display. So if I choose that button, your display should go back to scrolling as normal. Now the last button here is add other. I'm going to go ahead and click on it and show it to you. The register information. We have a place for a description. We have a place for a register. We also have a place for a register type. So up here at the top left, we know that static pressure is 11.3.0. So I'm going to show you how we could just add anything we want, anything inside of the G4 that has an app array register. As long as we know what the app array register is, we can type it in here and view it in our monitor mode. So just for simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and put in static pressure, and for the register I'm going to put in the same register here, 11.3.0, and this is in fact a floating point, but here are a couple of the choices, the 16-bit integer and 32-bit and string. So I'm going to go ahead and choose float because this point is going to be changing, and say OK. So now I have a static pressure that I've added separately apart from what's in the list. And so with this being said, if I go back to add entry and I drop down my choices, let's say that you want to trend something that or monitor something that's not in this list, then all we really need to know is what is the app array register of the point that you want to look at. Okay, and then we can type that point. We'll go to add other. We would just give it a description, put in the app array register, and then what type of register is it, and then it should go ahead and put it into the monitor mode. And so now we have that set up, we should be able to do a save config and close out. And so now that those two monitor screens, or that monitor 2 screen is always going to be there. So I'm going to go down here to flow measurement and go back to one of these guys. Let's say flow rate, for example. If I hover over flow rate, I have 11.7.19. So I'm going to go back up to monitor. I'm going to go to monitor 2. I'm going to do an add other, and this is going to be flow rate. And we said it was 11.7.19. And it is a floating point. I'm going to say OK. So now I have 11.7.19 flow rate, and when it refreshes I should have a value coming in. And now from here we could go back and do another trend. And so notice the difference between the first time we did the trend and this time. We still have the time and date stamp coming in. We have static pressure twice, of course, and then the flow rate. And once again we could go back now and we could graph. And so right now I have the static pressure, the first static pressure. I'm going to go ahead and double click on that and I could choose flow rate, go ahead and apply, and okay, so now you can see that it's changed on the left here, and I have flow rate, time and date stamp with the actual values as it comes in. So this concludes monitor mode and monitor setup.